Welcome to the Rich with Purpose podcast, the finance podcast that's about more than just money. I'm your host, Thabojan Rasiah, financial advisor to hundreds of successful clients over the years. In each episode of this show, I speak with other experts in the complex world of money and finance, and together we discuss how you can ensure you make smart decisions with your money. Even more importantly, how to connect those decisions with your values and your purpose in order to achieve everything that is most important to you. Please note that everything we discuss is not personal advice, but general in nature. For the full disclaimer, please visit our website, richwithpurpose.com.au, where you can also register your details to get access to all our free resources. And please hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. I'm really excited about today's episode, in which I've been fortunate to get an exclusive interview with Carl Richards. For the financial advisors listening, Carl needs no introduction whatsoever, but for those of you who don't know Carl, let me tell you a bit more. Carl Richards is the creator of the Sketch Guy column in the New York Times since 2010. He's very well known in the finance industry, particularly for his books One Page Financial Plan and The Behavior Gap. What Carl is most famous for, however, is his collection of sketches, through which he makes complex financial concepts easy to understand. His sketches have appeared in various exhibitions and are mostly found on the walls in offices of hundreds of financial advisors around the world. In this episode, we explore the concept of real financial planning, as opposed to the product-focused approach used by so many financial advisors globally, and why starting with one's purpose is the only way to truly achieve everything that is most important to you. We also talk about the challenges that humans face when trying to invest and why we are not built to be good at investing, which leads us to the conversation about how humans need to think in order to be good at investing. You will learn about how to invest, particularly when markets are scary and uncertain, which is almost always, by the way. And make sure you listen to the end, where we challenge the idea that more money is better. In fact, we know that more money is not the path to security or happiness. So if you're interested in learning about how to think about money, happiness, and purpose, you will definitely enjoy this episode of the Rich with Purpose podcast. Welcome to the Rich with Purpose podcast, Carl Richards.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to chat with you.
I am super excited, Carl. You are one of the most well-known people in our financial advice industry. The Sketch Guy, been drawing little sketches in the New York Times for 10 years now. Also author of many really popular books. Behavior Gap being one of the fantastic ones that anyone that wants to read a really good book about how to think about money, Behavior Gap's a winner. And really what you're a master of is articulating complex ideas in a simple way. I just love the way that you communicate financial ideas, but I also love the way that you think about life and connect things to do with money back to things that are actually far more important than money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thanks for that, first of all. And when we think about this idea of, it's funny, most of us, when we start to engage with the topic of money, and by most of us, I mean most humans, when we start to engage with the topic of money, we think we're going to be engaging with something like a spreadsheet or a calculator. You know, it's a set of numbers. It's going to be rational. 2 + 2 always equals 4. It doesn't matter if I'm scared or worried or excited. It always equals 4. That's kind of what we think if we're taught. And I lived for years in your neck of the woods and spent lots of time there and had lots of these conversations. So I know this isn't an American problem. I currently live in London. It's not a UK problem. It's a human. And problem's not even the right word, but it's just the way humans view money is we've been trained that it's supposed to be this spreadsheet. It's about numbers. It's about math. It's a math problem. And then we go to touch it and it's like you're touching an electric fence that you didn't know was electric. Like, whoa, suddenly it's about feelings, and emotions. It's the things that keep us up at night. It's the dreams for our children, right? It's the concerns we have for our parents. Like, you can't get any more sort of emotional than that. And so I think this idea of being thoughtful about why money is important to you. It's crazy that we're not doing more of it, right? Like, it's crazy that this is a novel and unique idea, and that most people don't talk this way, because it makes no sense. It's as if we are worldwide. It's as if we are arguing and debating about whether to take a plane, a train, or an automobile on a trip before we've decided where we're going. And I think the essence of sort of real financial planning and getting clear about our relationship with money as humans starts with the never-ending process of defining where you want to go, right? What's the purpose? Why am I doing this? Then the other stuff is just layered on top. The other stuff is easy, right? Easy is probably not the right word. The other stuff is simple. So anyway, yeah, I don't. It's really fun exploration, because very few people talk about it this way. It boggles. It's just mind-boggling to me that very few people talk about it this way.
Why are we so obsessed with, I don't know. I mean, you talk about the financial pornography network, and it's our whole finance money industry. Whether it's the stockbrokers, whether it's financial advisors, whether it's the media, we're so focused on products and stocks and solutions, and we try to find, to use doctors' terms, we try to find the medicine before we diagnose the problem or try and figure out what we're trying to achieve, don't we?
Yeah, Thabojan. I mean, I think that's such a good point, and I think it's really it's no I mean, it's no surprise that we do that, because it's just a human trait. Like, we humans like to find shortcuts. Our brains are not wired to analyze every potential option. I mean, imagine if you did that in the morning when you went to get dressed. If you literally looked at every single potential combination of clothing in your closet every single morning, you would be paralyzed, right? You'd be there all day. So we find these shortcuts, and one way these shortcuts show up in our financial lives is in the form of certainty. People offering certainty. And the way they offer certainty is and we as humans, we've been looking for millennia for people who can tell us what the future looks like. Like, where's it going to rain? Yeah, where's it going to rain? Where's the buffalo? Like, where do I find food? We've been looking for that forever. And so it's really easy. Certainty is really easy to sell to humans. It's impossible to deliver, and that's part of the reason almost everybody's dissatisfied with their financial experience, and particularly with the advice that they often think they're getting, because it's around certainty. So you can imagine when you have that combination, like, we're looking for shortcuts, we're wired to desire certainty, and somebody shows up with a fancy little package with a bow on it in the form of a product, we think, oh, that must be our job. Find the best product. And we haven't defined what the purpose is yet. And so that just leads to this hamster wheel. And I bet all of your listeners can relate to this, that this hamster wheel of, you find what you think is the solution. You're just so happy and relieved. You put your money there. 12, 18, 24 months later, it no longer feels like the solution. You find a new solution. You're so happy and relieved. You put your money there. So you almost build, as humans, we're kind of wired to build a system where we buy high and sell low, and kind of repeat that time after time after time, because we think it's our job. It's well-intentioned. It's not because we're dumb. Everybody listening to this, like, you you're not dumb, right? It's because we're wired that way. And then there's this whole layer of solution sets, the financial pornography network you mentioned. It seems like, they look really fancy. They seem like they know what they're talking about. They're from places, Sydney, London, New York. Like it seems like they should know what they're talking about. But the problem is they're just hacking at the branches. That sort of hamster wheel, these solution sets sit up in the branches. And we all know that, like, when the wind blows, the branches move a lot. And all your work is suggesting is, hey, let's get to the root of the problem. And then we can worry later about the branches. The root requires some deep work. It requires some thought. It requires slowing down a little bit. It requires awareness. And we're not wired to do that naturally. We're wired to get a quick fix, quick solution. So I think that's why that happens.
And I think what ends up happening is, in the absence of being clear about what you're trying to achieve, or in the absence of even knowing that you need to think about the outcome or the purpose, the natural direction is to just try and get more money, because surely that will make me happy, or surely that will help me achieve whatever it is I want to achieve. And then that also leads you then to saying, well, how do I make more money? I need to find the best investment property, or the best stock, or the guru who's going to give me the best product or solution. And we end up just looking for the wrong thing.
For sure. Yeah. And again, it's just really important to understand it's not because we're dumb, right? It's just because it's almost as if, and I can't remember who said this. I think is either Kahneman or like one of the super smart people in the behavioral finance world said that if you were to design a bad investor, you would design a human. All of these natural tendencies that have kept us alive as a species work against us when it comes to investing. And so it's no doubt, right? Like when your hand is on a hot stove, you're going to take it off, right? And we've translated sort of like markets moving, just to be specific about investments for a minute, right? Markets moving up or down. We've translated that as we're hardwired to get more of what gives us pleasure or security, and to run away from things that cause us pain. And because everybody around us, when markets are moving up, everybody around us is happy. It feels like, hey, everybody's happy. I'm happy. This feels good. I want more of this thing that feels good. And then if we were to say, hey, maybe this is getting a little crazy. Maybe I should not do what everybody else is doing. That means stepping out of a herd. And we all know what happens when you step out of a herd, you get killed, right? So that's why all that wiring, and then we sort of think, and then you layer on top of that this sense of security that we so desperately want. And we have translated security must equal more. And I love what you said, like if we have any problems, let's just get more. And that's not the answer, right? If you're a little psychotic with money, particularly if you're insecure around money, like most of us are, the solution is not more money. It makes sense that you would feel that way. I know I do. Like, oh, geez, if I'm not secure with X in the bank, then I surely will feel secure with 2X or 10X in the bank. I know it feels that way, but I'm telling you it's not true, because I know people with $50 million that are completely insecure around money. And I know people with no money in the bank that are secure. Now I'm talking from a place of relative privilege, in the sense of after our basic needs are met. After our basic needs are met, more money doesn't deliver more security, and it certainly doesn't deliver more happiness. counter to what we think.
Yeah, Morgan Housel talks about it in one of his chapters in his recent book, The Psychology of Money. I've referenced this in a couple of these episodes, but he talks about how much is enough.
Yeah, we're just not wired to think about it, and we need to rewire ourselves to think about it, like to just get clear. And the science, the data, the science is pretty clear about this. Happiness, assuming that's the goal, and that's sort of what I'm assuming, is sort of lasting kind of contentment. It doesn't come from the things that all the cool kids on Instagram tell us it comes from. It doesn't come from new plastic items. It doesn't come from shiny new things. It doesn't come from spending. It doesn't come from spending on stuff. Happiness comes from experiences with people you love, spending time with people you love. And sometimes that costs a lot of money, but you can also make it cost almost nothing. Let me just tell you one quick story. One summer we had this amazing just confluence of events in our family. We have 4 kids. At the time they were young. And there's just sort of a confluence of events, like work trips, whatever, where we went on like 3 or 4 amazing trips as a family to places that, like I grew up in the mountains in Utah. I never imagined being able to go to Sydney or the South Island of New Zealand. I never imagined being able to go to these places when I was little. We went to like 3 or 4 amazing places in one summer. Amazing. At the end of the summer, I remember talking to my son, Sam, who was like 8 or 9 or something. And I said to him, "Hey, what was your highlight of the summer?" Thinking he would say something like, "That time we ran up the stairs on the Eiffel Tower," or something, like something like. He's like, "Hey, Dad, do you remember that time we just went down by the lake by the house and threw rocks for a couple hours?" It's like, oh my gosh, seriously? That's amazing. So I think when you think about enough in that kind of context, and what that requires is for us to make, I like to think of it as make small bets. If you want to learn what enough is, try something, but then think about it. Like another example would be, my wife and I used to go on a lot of dates with other, like we used to go out with other couples, and we would go to a movie, a quick dinner and then movie. And one night we were like, well, wait, kind of the reason we're going is to connect. And then we go sit in a movie. And, we spent this money on dinner, and it wasn't about the money. It was just about like thinking about the connect, like what's the goal? So you place a small bet. Going out to dinner was fun, to a movie fun. That was a small bet. You know what? That wasn't as much fun as I thought. Like we didn't get what we thought we wanted. The movie was good, but we didn't get to connect. Oh, here's another small bet. What if we invited people over to our house and we got all the ingredients there, but we didn't prepare it, and we just made dinner together? So we took it was 2 or 3 hours. Like, let's make dinner, let's eat dinner, let's hang out, chat. Oh, holy cow, like the connection was 10 times what it was. And by the way, as a side benefit, it costs a little bit less. So the way to find enough is to make these small bets and then pay attention to the return you get. And if the return isn't what you think, make a different bet. Because it turns out I can sit by the lake and throw rocks with, someday in the future with grandkids, and it will probably be more memorable for them than me flying them across the world.
Yeah, that's amazing, Carl. And it just reminds me of a conversation I had with Baz Gardner in episode 2, where he talked about currency, and we always think about currency as money, but we spoke about currency being other things that you can get from other people, and you can get paid in so many ways. And, whether it's affection, whether it's love, whether it's respect, there are actually so many ways that we can get paid, and so many of those ways to get paid are far more valuable than what we normally think when we think of currency.
For sure. For sure. And I think that just requires, the reason it's hard is because it just requires us to pay attention, to slow down long enough. And by long enough, I mean like 30 seconds, right? To just simply go, I just did this. What was the return? How did I feel? Did I enjoy? How does it, like just embody it for a minute. Just stop and take a deep breath and think, oh, I just spent $8.97 on a sandwich. Isn't that interesting? Just noticing, just simply noticing, not judging, not trying to fix, just noticing our interaction with how we spend and how we save and how we invest, how we use our capital. It's just noticing, and we're not trained to do that. We're just running so fast. And this isn't even about, like, it's not more effort. It's not more time. It doesn't take more money. It just takes shifting a little bit to just the habitually start noticing instead of habitually spending without thought or investing without thought, or just notice. And it's hard. It's really hard. Like I've got a long ways to go. My wife's really good at it, but I have a long ways to go with this stuff. But every time I do it, I realize, you know what? I'm just looking at the closet. Like, there's a bunch of stuff in there that I don't really use. Well, how could I prevent that cycle next time? When I go to buy something, could I just, like, we have a little trick. We have an Amazon trick. It's called the 72-hour bin. I noticed this with books. I'd read about a book online. Somebody would tweet something about a book. I think, I got to have that book. I'd buy the book, and the next thing it'd be in my desk, and I'd wake up like 60 days later and there'd be a stack of unread books on my desk and be like, how did these get here? And then I would realize, that's how they got there. So now I have a rule. Any book I'm going to buy, I just violated this rule 2 days ago. And I'm thinking, I bought a book 2 days ago, violated the rule. And I literally, within 24 hours, I'm like, I don't want that book. So that's a reminder. I have a little list. Amazon will let you put lists together. I have a list. It's called 72-hour bin. It's got to go in the 72-hour bin for 72 hours before I buy it. You should see how many books are still in there. Most books don't make it out. Right? So anyway, just little things like that.
I guess it connects a little bit with one of your sketches, and I will in the show notes put some of these sketches below for listeners to be able to refer to. But one of them where we talk about your use of capital and the connection with your purpose and the intersection of those two things.
Yeah,
can you talk to that a little bit, Carl?
Yeah, I just believe the definition of real financial planning, and whenever I use the word planning, I use that loosely. I'm not necessarily referring to a product or a 2-inch thick book. I'm referring actually to the opposite. I'm referring to the ongoing sort of process of thinking about where am I today, where do I want to go, and how do I want to get there. That's a never-ending process. That process is called real financial planning, and real financial planning is just the overlap. Like if you think about it as a Venn diagram, 2 circles. One circle is labeled what's important to me, and the other circle is labeled use of capital. Now we could shortcut that and say purpose in one circle and money in the other circle. And the overlap of purpose and money is real financial planning. And the idea just is to think through, like, and I love the term purpose. I know you use that a lot, and I love that term because it sits underneath. It's sort of foundational. It sits underneath things like goals or tactics or strategies. It sits underneath it. Most people, and I would dare say 99.9% of the people I've talked to have never defined sort of their why. That's another way to think about purpose, is like your why, like Simon Sinek's work, start with why. Nobody's 99.9%. I literally can't think of anybody that I asked, have you done this? And they said yes before we worked together. So defining purpose drives all those other things. Purpose drives goals, purpose drives strategy, tactics, all those things. And one thing that's really important to understand about how we use money I mean, this shows up in the investment world a lot, but it also shows up in spending. Often, personal finance has been about teaching people to say no a lot. Like beat themselves up. It's been about pain and restriction, budgeting. Like if I say the word budgeting, we all have the same reaction. Like, we tear up your credit cards, make it hard. I even know people who there used to be like a little wrist thing that you could press a button, it would zap you. And so like if you spent money, you'd press a button, it would zap you. Like that's where we're coming from. What's that? If it's so much better if we define a deep yes in the form of a purpose, then it's easy to say no to. It's not really even about saying no anymore. It's about saying, you can say, I've chosen to spend my money a different way. That feels much different than no. No, 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 no. We can't afford that. No. Or flicking yourself with your rubber band on your wrist. It feels much different to say, I've chosen to spend my money a different way. Well, what's that different way? Or I want to say no to selling out of the market when it's scary. Well, how do I say no to that? If I remember, when I'm saying no to that, I'm out in the branches. What's the root? Purpose. I can come back. I can continually be coming back to purpose, and it will root me when I'm tempted to do something silly because I'm human, which for me is like every day I'm tempted to do something silly. And I have to go back to this statement of financial purpose, which is what I'm trying to get the whole industry to adopt. I think every client should have a statement of financial purpose. Mine's 2 sentences. Time with my family, mainly outside, and serving in my community. That's why money matters to me. Well, when I think about it that way, do I want to invest in that cool new startup? Yeah, no. When I think about it that way, do I really need to spend money on another pair of shoes? Well, unless they're shoes that help me get outside with my family or serve in my community, like some work boots or something. Yeah, so it's the lens through which we view the world. That's why I think it's so important.
Doesn't it? Changed everything. The difference between the stick approach, which is no, versus the carrot approach, which is yes. And I can just think of an example. In the last month, we worked with a couple that they had some great aspirations in terms of what they wanted to achieve. And just by walking through the process and having the deep conversations about purpose and what's really important to them, we didn't have to say, you shouldn't do that. We took them on this journey over multiple conversations where they came out the other side and said, we now realize that is not what we really want. This big house that was going to be more than 2/3 of their net worth, they have come around to see that the things that are actually most important to them, the time with their family, stress, education, these things are areas that are far more important than this big thing that sounded lovely, but was not unattainable, but it was going to stop them from being able to achieve things that were actually more important to them.
Yeah, it's so important. It's such a gift. That's such a gift. I mean, it's because the thing that's important for us to understand, which is why I don't, love the term goals. Actually, I don't have a problem with the term goals. I have a problem with the way we typically go about it when we ask somebody what their goals are, when we put pressure on it. It's because we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We think we know. But this gets to Rene Girard's work around mimetic desire. Like, we don't even know what it is that we want. Like, clarifying our goals is a process in and of itself. And it often involves being wrong. Like saying, I think I want that. And being wrong, I mean like having a strong opinion and then finding out that strong opinion turns out, like you just mentioned, turns out I could tell you 100 stories about that experience. Like one of them, Darren and Allison, people I was working with, these were friends of mine. They'd been married about 15 years at this point. We were having this conversation and we were talking about what's really important. And Allison says to me, Darren's sitting right next to her husband. Allison says to me, gosh, I really want to travel more. And Darren, and I'm not actually making this up, Darren fell off of his chair. He was like, what I have never heard you say that before. Like I've known you for 20 years. We've been married for 15 years. I've never heard. I thought you just like to live in this little community where we are and just be here and be rooted. I didn't know. I love to travel. Why haven't we been talking about this? And she was like, what are you talking about? I say it all the time. And he's like, no, I mean, I could tell you hundreds of stories about that. And in some cases, they weren't as obvious as Allison knowing that. They were like, neither one of them knew it. And they discovered it by this small bet, like, you know what? We don't like going to the movies. We like connecting with our friends. Right? So that gift of clarifying where you want to go, and that sits just above purpose, right? Like as we move from purpose, we get to sort of maybe some specific things, which we then put some framework around and we call them goals, right? It's because most of us wake up. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we read about this all the time in the news, right? 55, 60 years old and go, gosh, is this all there is? Is this really what I was? I mean, you see this particularly 45, 50, right? Like that we call it a midlife crisis. Is this really? And then suddenly we have all sorts of crazy behavior to try and fix that. Well, what if we were just a little more intentional as we go? Yeah, it's amazing.
And what do we do? What do we do for a midlife crisis? Buy new cars, buy more stuff, right?
Yeah, spend our way out of it, because that will certainly solve the problem. The problem is, I have a friend, his name's Paul, and he talks about this all the time, which I just love. He says, look, if you can't, and he equates it to income. He's like, look, if you even isolate this for cost of living. So take, like, you live in a specific whatever county or area of Sydney, you can find what the average household income is. And if you make more than the average household income and you can't design a life where you're happy with that, it's not the money problem. It's the way you've designed the life. And so there's a whole movement called effective altruism around this. And a lot of them use average, like the median income in the UK. This movement's started really at Oxford. The median income in the UK, and let's just say as I recall, it was like £35,000. I think it's £27,000. That's what I recall. So these are people who make, £150,000 a year, and they've decided to live on 27 and give the rest away. And then they get asked this question all the time, like, how could you live on 27? And their answer is, half the population lives on less in the UK, right? So it's not a problem of more will make me happier. It's a problem of I haven't designed my life correctly. That's a pretty harsh, like extreme example, but I think that idea of saying, wait, if I'm unhappy with my life, midlife crisis thing, more things, more of the same thing I've been doing, or a different version of more is not going to solve that problem. Like, far more important to say, what is it that would, like, what is, like, and we can look at the research, things like quiet contemplation, experiences with our friends and family, a walk in the park. Those things bring happiness. A car doesn't. Now, the problem is it does for about 45 seconds. And maybe it'll be 45 days, but it's not going to be much longer than that. It's called the hedonic treadmill. We know it exists. As soon as you get it, you think, what's next? There are things that don't operate that way. We know it. Like, it would be really interesting for somebody to live. I've thought about this. I've thought about codifying what we know about happiness and money. Elizabeth Dunn's book is great. Elizabeth Dunn says, I think it's called Spending Your Way to Happiness. She says, if you think money can't buy happiness, you just don't know how to spend it yet. You just don't know the right ways to spend it. And so it'd be really interesting for somebody to go, look, here's the 47 rules that we know from science. And what if I just followed those? They're all counterintuitive. Go on a walk instead of buying a new pair of shoes. They're all countercultural too, right? They're all anti-Instagram, but they're all science, right? So anyway, enough about that. And they work. Yeah, exactly.
We'll put a link to that book in the show notes as well, Carl. So I guess that's kind of part of that behavior gap, which is this is more about the right behaviors, the wrong behaviors in terms of, the impact on our money. And then you also talk about the behavior gap from an investing perspective and making poor decisions in that sense as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but those things that's all in the branches, right? Like the investing stuff, we do it all day long. It's where this behavior shows up. We buy high, we sell low. We do that because we're human. So to everybody listening to this, please, like, empathetic hug. Like, I do it too. And it doesn't make us dumb. It makes us human, right? When the markets go down, it feels scary. It makes sense that you're scared right now. And it almost doesn't matter when you listen to this. But certainly when this is recorded, it makes sense that you're scared about the market, the economy, the world. Totally makes sense. It makes sense that you think taking action would be smart, because in other times of your life when you're scared, there's a bear that jumps out of the bush, or, well, geez, everything that moves in Australia is trying to kill you, right? But it's not a bear. So there's something that jumps out of the bush, you take action. But in this case, the solution to this is not to think about action. The solution to this is to go back to your purpose. So get out of the branches. Say, look, I'm thinking about doing something. Okay, let's go back and connect. Why did we invest this money in the first place? Hopefully you can answer this. If you can't, go get to the point where you can. But why is your money invested in the way it is? The answer should be, well, because it's built on a plan. This portfolio gives me the greatest chance of meeting my goals, greatest likelihood of meeting my goals using the weighty evidence of history and everything we know about portfolio design. This portfolio gives me the greatest chance of meeting my goals. How did I come up with my goals? Well, because my goals are linked to my purpose. Okay, has the purpose changed? So you reconnect. Has the purpose changed? No, it hasn't changed. Okay, then you move up and say, let's just remind ourselves, have the goals changed? No, the goals haven't changed. All right, well, now I'm feeling a little rooted. Okay, well, if the purpose hasn't changed and the goals haven't changed, has anything fundamentally changed about the investments we're using? Was there fraud? Was there anything? No, nothing's changed there. Okay, well, it turns out you're probably in the right place. Then maybe you have the ability to go, great, I'll set that on the shelf and ignore it because I just checked in and everything's still the way it should be. That's much different than, don't you know if you miss the 10 best days? And don't you know it, like throwing, it's get out of the branches, get back to the roots. Yeah.
That's beautifully explained, Carl. I know that we're really privileged to have you on the call. I know you do have to start preparing for another session. So really appreciate that explanation. We are going to have other experts on talking about investment philosophies and investment strategies. But, the key message is you got to start with your purpose and then design the portfolio investment strategies that align with giving yourself the best chance of achieving that, as you said.
Yeah. Amen, my friend. Thanks for the work you're doing, and please keep it up.
Thanks very much, Carl. Appreciate it. And as always, love having the chat. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Our aim is to share the knowledge with as many people as possible. So please share it with everyone you know. And if you're enjoying the show, please subscribe and visit our website, richwithpurpose.com.au, to get access to all our free resources. See you next time.